So Google just announced a new core update called the Google Helpful Content Update, and many SEOs are freaking out. But the question is, should you freak out? And what actionable steps should you take today and after the update to avoid getting hit? Well, in this video, I'll share my analysis of Google's update, what to expect, and what to do moving forward. And this video you're about to watch is from my private SEO training program, Gotcha SEO Academy. Let's dive right in. If you guys haven't heard, there is going to be an update next week for Google. This is going to be a very interesting one that I'm going to watch very carefully, because what they're implying is that they're probably going to go after, some AI content. More than likely, it's going to be designed to attack AI content that is really that type of auto-generated content, the type of stuff that's really not high quality. So for example, if we go to the tool that I've showed you guys before here, more than likely, and who knows, maybe Google's come up with some technology for being able to be able to find this type of content a little bit easier. But more than likely, it's going to target, this type of content. This is what, auto-generated content would look like. It's going to be really, really bad, like really low quality stuff, not well edited. It's just not good. It's just not good content. Google can probably decipher and be able to find this type of content, no doubt about it. It won't be as effective at finding content generated with AI, but then goes through the type of process that I've been recommending here for a while. So I don't suspect that type of content will get hit. I think this type of content will. And a lot of people, because AI content is getting a lot of, let's say it's getting a lot of press recently, what tends to happen is, not to say this nicely, but lazy people will see something and say, wow, this can make my job so much easier. And this just, I can take advantage of this so I don't have to work hard. And what they'll do is they'll use these tools and they'll use them in the least efficient way possible. They'll generate content like this, and then it forces Google to reassess what's going on. So it feels very similar to, where we were at in 2011, actually, and a few years after that, where you could really heavily manipulate link building to really rank pretty easily with, I've talked about this before, but like I put up a new article that was decent, slam some links into it, and we would rank within 30 days. That obviously doesn't happen anymore, right? That's just not the way it works anymore. And this is a very similar situation. Like, I think a lot of really low quality content has kind of slipped through the cracks, but I don't believe that this type of stuff is going to work long-term. And it really has never worked super long-term anyway. So going back to this, let's look at a couple of key points here. So they're calling it the Helpful Content Update. Okay. So how, and this part in here is particularly important. Okay. So original, they want to ensure people see more original, helpful content written by people for people in search results. Okay. This is specifically targeted at AI content, right? They're not saying it, but that's what they mean. This is what they're talking about there. And to the average person, doesn't mean a whole lot, right? But to us, we know what they're talking about here. And so what we have to do is we need to read between the lines when it comes to Google. And what does it mean for content to be helpful, right? Let's just talk about that. What does it mean for a piece of content to be helpful? Well, to me, for a page to be helpful for a particular query, it needs to satisfy the intent, right? That's what makes it helpful. So someone searches something, you deliver a page that solves their problem, gives them what they need, and they're satisfied at the end of that, right? What is not helpful is when you land on a page and you say, this didn't help me at all, and you need to go back to the search results to find another answer, right? And that happens to me a lot, even in my own personal experience of just browsing. Like, I'll look something up and I'll land there, I'll be like, this didn't help me at all. I'm going to go back. And like sometimes for kind of complicated challenges, like for example, here's a perfect example. I'm having a little bit of a shoulder issue right now. Okay. A little bit of a shoulder issue from weightlifting, whatever. I don't know why it's happening. Probably from my years and years of throwing the baseball, but that's more, probably the stem of it. But what I did is I started looking into rotator cuff type of stuff and trying to see like what I can do to kind of rehab it. I had to open up like 40 different windows just to try to find something that was well put together to explain like, okay, this happened, and now here's what you need to do to go out fixing this. Here's an action plan for you. But of course, you don't get that. You just get a bunch of random recommendations from random people, and then you're not any further than you were before. So you'll end up just doing a hodgepodge of things. And that's not helpful, right? If we think about that word helpful, like that's not helpful for me, right? And that's what we need to be thinking about with our content. Like it's not just about being about satisfying the intent, which is most important, but also like we need our pages should be the most helpful option for that keyword. And that's why when I talk about it needs to be different and better than what's ranking, that's what I'm talking about. It needs to be the most valuable asset for that keyword. And if it's not, then you should not expect to stay there for a long time, right? It needs to be that clear differentiation. And you've built a clear moat around that content. So in my opinion, this is only going to be, this is going to make things better, right? This should theoretically improve the quality of all the results. We'll see what happens, right? We don't really know how this is going to turn out, but the concept of helpful content, satisfy the intent and have the best page for that particular keyword, or at least, maybe 5% better. It doesn't need to always be 10x better, 100x better, but at least 5x better than what's currently ranking. Okay. And that's what we should aim for. And then we'll just look at this, a couple other things. So this sentence here, the helpful content update aims to better reward content where visitors feel they've had a satisfying experience, satisfying search intent, right? Satisfying and giving the user what they want, right? That's all we should absolutely be trying to do. And then while the content that doesn't meet a visitor's expectation won't perform as well. This is another, and to get a little nuanced here, helpful content doesn't necessarily equal long content as well, right? That's a common misconception because unfortunately, there's this notion that like, well, we find the keywords and then we just create the longest piece, longest page for that keyword. That is not even close to being true. And actually a very long piece of content could not be helpful, right? Because it's too long. It doesn't get to the point. It doesn't really give us what we need. So, in both directions, we can swing there. So, and ultimately what this is saying too, what they're focusing on here is that we shouldn't just be creating content to just feed Google's algorithm, right? That's not the purpose of the content. The purpose of the content is for the user. It's not for the search engine. Yes, we optimize it for the search engine. Yes, we do that. But the purpose, like the core purpose of that page is to achieve a particular outcome for that user. So whether that's they land on your page and they say, wow, that was so helpful. And then they share it on social media, or wow, that was so helpful. I'm going to, maybe they're happen to be a blogger. They go and say, I'm going to link to this in my one article because it was so incredibly helpful. Like that's an option. The other one is, wow, this content was so great. I want to get in touch with Joe because this was awesome. And I think he can help me even more, right? Now we've got a conversion. Or, wow, this is super helpful. I wonder what else they offer, right? These are these kind of outcomes that come from good content. The opposite is true as well. Wow, I landed on this. This was not helpful at all. I'm going to pogo stick back to the search results. And then you're going to get that negative signal on that page. Or, yikes, this is horrible. Click off, right? Quick bounce, quick exit, not visiting a second page, not completing a particular goal. These are all these negative signals that you don't want to have. It's very obvious when you have a good piece of content, right? I mean, you have these signals that it's a good piece of content. People stay on it longer. People don't pogo stick. People share it on social. People link to it. People visit a second page, and people will complete some sort of goal. Not everyone, but at least some people. They click around. They're clicking on the page. They're highlighting things. Maybe they're copying things. Like there's just things happening. And if things are happening, those are good signals for a page. Maybe they're even bookmarking it. So there's all kinds of things that can happen. So this one here, do you have an existing or intended audience for your business or site that would find the content useful if they came directly to you? So this just means that you're creating content that's relevant to your ideal customer. right? So it means on my SEO site, I'm not creating content about coffee reviews. Just doesn't make sense, right? I need to stay within my topical bubble. I need to stay within my realm of topical authority. This is very important. This goes along with the second one. Does it clearly demonstrate firsthand experience and depth of knowledge, right? So, for example, and they actually use a really interesting example here, visiting a place, right? So this is talking about like if you had a travel blog, let's say you wrote a blog post about visiting St. Louis, but like clearly you've never been to St. Louis, and all you did was just go and take a bunch of pictures from other people and create this kind of like jumbled thing. Well, what would happen is there'd be clearly a lack of firsthand experience and depth of knowledge because you wouldn't know the nuances about St. Louis because you haven't been here, right? So you wouldn't know certain little things. You wouldn't know about certain little restaurants that are only in St. Louis. You wouldn't know about that, there's custard's really popular here in St. Louis, right? So you may know about Ted Drewes because you did a little research, but you may not know the nuances of Ted Drewes because you just have never been here before, right? So in Google, not saying Google will know those nuances either, but still it's the idea that we shouldn't be creating pages on things that we don't really know, right? So, and I'm very guilty of this too, by the way. Like on our affiliate sites, we create reviews on products that we've never used before. And that doesn't always feel so good, right? And I always feel a lot better when I create a review on something that I've actually done, something that I've actually used. And so on my coffee blog, though, like all of the coffee reviews, I actually went to the store, purchased all this coffee, actually tried it, and then, gave my notes, wrote a review, and I actually signed it to a writer. But I gave them those bullet points, and that gives, kind of real life depth of knowledge. So that's what we should be thinking about, especially if an affiliate site, really any site, honestly, that's what we should be thinking about. Because Google, I have a feeling if your content is very surface level, they're going to start being able to know if they don't already. And keep in mind too, when there's an update like this, these signals are already happening. When they say they're rolling it out next week, they've already been rolling it out. They've already been testing it. This has already been in the works. So just know that these signals are already cooking, and they're probably just going to turn up the dial next week a little bit more. So a couple other ones. Does your site have a primary purpose or focus? Once again, your site should be focused on one core topic. After reading your content, will someone leave feeling they've learned enough about a topic to help achieve their goal? How does Google measure this? They can't ask Joe and say, hey, Joe, did you fix your shoulder? Like they can't do that, but they can look at the signals, right? They can look at the user signals to say, well, based on the benchmark for this keyword, the average person will spend X amount of time. And so if your page is in that range or above, you're doing well. But if it's way below, they're saying, something's wrong with this one. Let's replace it with another, right? Just keep in mind, like Google's just like a SaaS product. Like if we really break it down, Google's a SaaS company. And what do SaaS companies do? They're constantly testing to get user feedback. And that's what the search engine is doing as well. It's constantly looking, okay, based on this benchmark, these guys are above, so we're going to keep them here. These guys are below, so we're going to replace these guys with someone else. And that's what it's doing. It's constantly testing to see what's going to be the best result for that keyword. And that's why when people lose traffic and lose rankings, they always assume that they got penalized or whatever, but sometimes it's just because your content just isn't where it needs to be, and the user signals are not there because the content is not great. It's like you can't out exercise a bad diet. And that's what a lot of SEOs try to do. They create garbage and then they drive links to it that are high quality links, and they're trying to prop up garbage, but it just doesn't work super well because they're not focusing on the one thing that really actually matters. And it's always going to be content. Like it's the thing that matters more than anything else. And if you don't do it right, you're going to be constantly in a hamster wheel. So just can't stress it enough. And then there's a question, how do you avoid taking a search engine first approach? Okay. Google's basically just saying, don't create content that is designed just to rank in Google. Create content that is actually designed to help a user achieve whatever the outcome is for that keyword. It's not a super complicated thing, but we just need to focus on satisfying intent. That's the key. and then making sure that the content is different and better than what's ranking. If we can do those things, you're not going to need to worry about this update, right? So, but I would, if you had a few minutes, go through this, like just look through it, just kind of reinforce these ideas, because the interesting part here is at the end, you'll see that Google says that you're not going to get like a manual action for this. You're not going to get like your traffic's not going to just drop off a cliff overnight. It's going to be like I showed you guys with the affordable SEO keyword. It's going to be that slow, painful death, right? Just really slow. And this is actually much better. Like I think the situation now with Google is actually better than ever before, because before, when they would launch a new update, I have many battle scars with updates. Okay. I went through the first Penguin, I went through Panda, I went through the exact match domain update, and then every other update after that. Okay. But at the time when those really heavy hitter updates were coming, there was no like just re-ranking and like reclassifying. It was like, you did this wrong, goodbye. Like your traffic is gone across the whole site. And it was devastating. Like there's no recovering from a penalty back then. You could try, but it was just pointless. Just start a new website. You're better off doing that. So at this point though, you can technically kind of mess up. Like you can mess up. And if you rework things and you make it better, you can improve. You can regain those rankings. So yeah, I think it's in a much better place now. I think Google kind of realized that like they can't just like devastate people every quarter. So now they've just decided like we're just going to keep these algorithms in place, and all they're doing, because before they would launch an update, okay, and you get hit, but then you have to wait until the next update to hope that whatever you did was resolved. Now it's just like they're just updating the search engine constantly, and you always have that opportunity to improve, right? There's always that time. So I personally think it's better at this point. But yeah, so this is, once again, nothing super scary to worry about on this. As long as you're not like creating gibberish content with AI, you're going to be fine. Okay. You will be fine, but I will be keeping tabs on this. Keep an eye on your rankings next week and coming in the next couple of weeks. So, and actually before that, I just noticed this. If we look at point number 3 here, are you using extensive automation to produce content on many topics? So we know what this is alluding to. This is AI content or auto-generated content. And then what they say, they use a very interesting word, extensive automation. So basically saying that you're, even using programmatic SEO as well, where you generate a bunch of pages at scale, would fall under this category too. So it's not just generating the content, but it's also programmatic SEO, or just any type of situation where you're trying to scale content across a whole site. This is probably would fall into that category. So yeah, I think this really, maybe I'm just a super big geek about all this stuff, but I think this is, for me, is like super exciting, because this is just like all the stuff that we talk about all the time, right? This is it. Like, this is exactly the way we should be creating content, like to satisfy what Google's saying here. I think this is like, I agree with these ideas. I do, like, a lot. And this one here, are you writing to a particular word count because you've heard or read that Google has a preferred word count? No, we don't. Google's saying that this is kind of like a dig at some of Brian Dean's studies, because Brian will say that based on the millions of search results that they analyze, that you should write 1,400 words or you should write 1,800 words. We know that this is not true, right? Because it's always going to be relative based on the keyword that you're going after. One keyword, you may only need 300 words, while another keyword, you may need 3,000. It's pretty different in that way. So I'll dive into this more. I think there's a lot to unpack here, but yeah, I think it's in a very interesting update. Very, very cool. So I hope that gave you clarity and direction based on the so-called helpful content update. Keep an eye on your rankings. Don't be emotional. Don't overcorrect, and just work to improve content UX and your backlink profile if you experience any negative outcomes from this update. So now to you, what are your thoughts about this Google update? Please share your feelings below, because it could spark some awesome conversations. Thank you so much for watching.